The Dendera Light, Part 2. The Power Beneath the Temple. The glow lasted less than 2 seconds, but it was enough. Enough to make Daniel question everything he thought he knew about history. The crypt was dark again, completely dark, the kind of darkness that feels alive. Daniel slowly turned his flashlight back on, his hand unsteady now. The beam hit the wall. The carving looked the same. Cold stone, ancient lines, no light, no movement, nothing. But Daniel knew what he saw. "You saw that too," he said. It wasn't a question. The man standing beside him didn't answer immediately. He kept looking at the relief, almost like he was waiting for it to happen again. Finally, he spoke. "Yes." Daniel's pulse quickened. "That means—" "It means," the man interrupted calmly, "we're out of time." Daniel frowned. "Out of time for what?" The man stepped closer to the carving again and ran his hand across one of the engraved structures, the long oval that people compared to a light bulb. "You're looking at this the wrong way," he said. Daniel crossed his arms. "Okay, then explain it." The man glanced at him. "What you're seeing isn't a lamp." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "That's reassuring." "It's a system." Daniel blinked. "A system? For what?" The man hesitated. "Energy." Daniel almost laughed, but something about the man's tone stopped him. "You're serious?" "Yes." Daniel stepped back and scanned the chamber again, this time more carefully. If this really was a system, there had to be more components, more clues. And slowly, details began to stand out. Patterns in the carvings, repetition, connections between symbols that didn't seem religious anymore. They looked mechanical. Daniel pointed at one of the pillars in the carving. "What's that supposed to be?" The man nodded slightly. "That's what most researchers argue about." "A pillar?" "It's called the Jed pillar." Daniel nodded slowly. "I've heard of it. Symbol of stability." "Yes," the man said. "Officially." Daniel stared at him. "Unofficially?" The man tilted his flashlight upward, illuminating the structure. "In engineering terms, it looks like an insulator." Daniel felt a chill again. "That's a big claim." "Yes." "But you're making it anyway." The man didn't deny it. Instead, he pointed to another part of the carving, the serpent inside the oval. "In mythology, that represents divine power." Daniel followed the line with his eyes. "And in your theory?" "Energy flow." Daniel rubbed his face. "Okay, let's assume you're right for a second." He gestured around the crypt. "If this really was a power system, where was the power source?" The man smiled faintly. "That's the question that got you here." Daniel waited. The man slowly turned and aimed his flashlight toward the floor, specifically toward a section of stone that looked slightly different from the rest, older or maybe newer. Hard to tell in the dim light. Daniel stepped closer. "Is that a repair?" "No," the man said quietly. "It's a seal." Daniel looked at him. "A seal for what?" The man paused. Then he said something that made the air feel heavier. "What's under this crypt?" Daniel stared at the floor. "You're saying there's another chamber?" "Yes." "Has it been excavated?" The man shook his head. "Not officially." Daniel sighed. "Of course." He knelt down and ran his hand across the stone surface. Dust collected along the edges of the slab. But there was something else, too. Faint markings. Not hieroglyphics. Different symbols. More geometric. Daniel's eyes widened slightly. "These aren't Egyptian." The man nodded. "No." "Then what are they?" The man hesitated again. "That's part of the problem." Daniel stood up slowly. "Start talking." The man looked toward the entrance of the crypt, making sure they were still alone. Then he said something that shifted the entire situation. "You know about the Baghdad battery." Daniel nodded immediately. "A clay jar that some people think could generate electricity." "Yes." "But it's debated." "Very."
Daniel crossed his arms. And? The man pointed at the carvings again. Imagine that idea scaled up. Daniel blinked. You're suggesting ancient Egyptians built a power grid? No. Then what? The man lowered his voice. I'm suggesting they found one. Silence filled the chamber again. Daniel felt his brain trying to process what he just heard. That's impossible. Most important discoveries are. Daniel paced slowly across the crypt. Found it where? Under us. Daniel stopped walking. You're serious? Yes.
Daniel looked down at the sealed stone again. If there's something under here, why hasn't anyone opened it? The man's expression changed slightly. They tried. Daniel waited. What happened? The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled something from his pocket. A small folded document. Old. Worn. He handed it to Daniel. Daniel opened it carefully. Inside were photographs, black and white, old excavation images, 1970s maybe, workers inside the crypt, tools, equipment, and then the last photo. Daniel's breathing slowed. The image showed a hole cut into the floor, exactly where the sealed slab was now, and below it, darkness. But inside that darkness, there was light. Not bright, not clear, but visible, a glow. Daniel looked up. This is real? The man nodded. The excavation stopped the same day that photo was taken. Why? The man's voice lowered again. Because the equipment started failing. Daniel frowned. That happens. Not all at once. Daniel felt that chill again. All the lights went out, the man continued. Radios stopped working. Generators shut down. Daniel glanced at the carving again, then back at the photo. And they sealed it? Yes. Why? The man answered with a single sentence. Because something down there was still active. A sudden sound echoed faintly through the crypt again. A vibration, this time stronger. Daniel looked up. That again? The man nodded slowly. That's not the temple. What is it? The man turned his flashlight toward the sealed stone floor. Daniel followed the beam. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Daniel saw it. A thin line of dust near the edge of the slab shifted slightly, like something moved beneath it. Daniel's heart started pounding. You saw that? Yes. That shouldn't happen. No. Another faint vibration, stronger now. Daniel swallowed. What did you mean earlier when you said it's starting? The man looked directly at him. Because this chamber hasn't reacted like this in decades. Daniel's voice dropped. What do you reacted? The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slowly turned his flashlight back to the Dendera carving, specifically the oval structure everyone called the light bulb. And then he said something that made the entire situation far more unsettling. Someone else is trying to turn it on. Daniel froze. What? The man stepped closer to the wall, running his hand across the carved lines again. They're not decorations. He looked back at Daniel. They're instructions. Another vibration shook the crypt. This time, a faint sound followed it. A low hum. Daniel's eyes widened. That's not possible. The man whispered. It is if someone below us already figured it out. And then the glow appeared again, stronger this time, not from the carving, from the sealed floor. Right between them, a thin line of light began leaking from the stone slab, and something beneath the temple was waking up.